URC round number 2, folks. The South African teams are back in action, albeit without their Springboks after missing out on round 1. There's been a few more blowouts this week after all close games in the first round. We'll wrap up things from round number 2, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. Change of scenery today. My son's got his little mate over in there making a heck of a racket down the other end of the house, so I'm locked up here in the bedroom talking to you guys about some URC. Leinster and the Dragons. This was one of the early week games along with the Glasgow and Benetton games. 34-6 at the LEIvDRA as well. I forget why, but the RDS wasn't available for this one. I think they had 18,000 fans in attendance. A lot of the kind of upper deck stands empty, but the lower deck seemed to be pretty well filled. 18,000. The Dragons aren't the biggest draw in the world, so not a bad attendance for mine. 34 points to 6. I mean, it was kind of close-ish at halftime. 10 points to 6. A couple of unconverted tries. I don't think Leinster fans will be entirely thrilled with that one, but they set the expectations pretty high. And as I mentioned, with the Dragons traditionally having a pretty poor record in the competition, people would have expected them to be put to the sword. Tries to Conan, Ross Byrne, Deegan, McCarthy, Lama, and King. So, yeah, bonus point win. Leinster are 2-0. Ross Byrne's dummy for his try is maybe the slowest dummy I've ever seen, but it had the same result. They scored when the Dragons boys had a yellow card to make it the initial score, I think it was. So 14-15 to crack the initial Dragons defence. The Dragons slotted 2 penalties in the first, none in the second, but it was always going to be a hard road for them. Possession finishes 57-43, territory 58-42, kind of indicative of how much ball the Leinster boys had, but the goal kicking was 2 from 6. Ideally, you'd like that to be a bit better, but man, how hard do you be on them for winning 34-6? It's a pretty emphatic bonus point victory over a side you were expected to beat well. So there's no real winning that one for Leinster. If you flog them, you were supposed to flog them. If you don't flog them, why didn't you flog them? And if you lose, oh man, it's world's coming to an end kind of stuff. Jimmy O'Brien, 5 defenders beaten, 62 metres for him. The Dragons hooker Brodie Coughlin, 16 from 17 tackles, not a bad defensive shift. Dragons record now 1-1, which is better than some years that they've started, and the Leinster boys are top of the log with a 2-0 record, 2 bonus point wins to start the campaign. Leinster away to Benetton next, and the Dragons boys at home to the Sharks. Second game, which was on at the same time, Glasgow and Benetton. I watched that one, did a full match review if you want to check that out, but in short, Benetton's discipline absolutely let them down. Red card to Scrafton and then 2 yellow cards. Kind of hard to win the game with that few guys on the field. Glasgow put them to the sword. Couple to Stain, who gets man of the match. Matt Fagerson, Darge, Dobby, Ferry. They got a heap of tries. So I think it was supposed to be closer than this. But as I said, if you can't keep your men on the field, it's always going to be a hard day at the office for the Benetton guys. They did score a maul try through Spaniolo, which was, as I think I put at the time, kind of pleasing to see someone else do it to Glasgow for a change, because they've got a thing about scoring maul tries of their own. But yeah, Glasgow get their title of defence properly underway after going down in round 1. So win for them in round 2. Round 2, they are now 1-1. The Benetton boys, after drawing that first game, are now 1 loss, 1 draw, and 0 in the wins column. So not the flashiest start for them. As I mentioned, Benetton are hosting Leinster next, so it don't get any easier. The Glasgow boys will be away to Cardiff, who are kind of high-flying in the competition thus far. South African team's back in action. Game 3, Lions up against Ulster, and it's a bit of a tri-fest for this one for the Lions. There'll be a lot said about the empty stands. Remember, they always film that stadium from an angle which I guess gives the best lighting, but that also is the place where people would have to sit in the scorching sun all day. So that stand is always empty. So it genuinely always looks worse than it is. I'm not saying the attendance is fantastic there at Ellis Park, but it genuinely looks worse than it was. And the Springboks were playing that day. So I feel like a lot of people, if they were to have the choice, potentially getting a braai ready and watching the box game necessarily than going to watch the Lions guys play Ulster. But if they'd gone to the game, they would have been treated to some nice tries. Mwane got one on 10 minutes. He beat 10 defenders and had 5 clean breaks, which is insane. That's almost as many clean breaks as Ulster got in the entire game. Frankie Horn got one from a maul. Maria got one from a maul. Fun Fake got the possibly best try of the game with the kind of sweet hands in the build-up. And then Wallater got one at the end. I haven't seen him play for a while, have I? Didn't he have a pretty serious injury a while back? But anyway, the young fly half, is he that young anymore? I can't even remember. But yeah, he got one right at the death for the Ulster guys. Cooney got one into the first half. Aidan Morgan got one at the start of the second half. So 2 tries in 2 weeks for him after a bunch of phases. That one, Werner Koch got one, chasing hard on a kick through, and Barrett got one on 77 minutes. So yeah, 4-try bonus point for the Ulster guys is at least something to take from game 1 of their trip to South Africa. But bonus point win for the Bulls guys is a Lions guys. Mark, don't confuse the Lions and the Bulls. Teams which are geographic rivals. Bonus point win for the Lions to start their campaign. Not a bad way to kick things off. 14 clean breaks to 6 is one of the key stats from that game. And then the tackling percentage, if you're an Ulster fan, you will be pretty livid with 82% for the Lions, which is not fantastic, but it's certainly better than the Ulster 68%. That is a lot of missed tackles. Like Sean Reffel had 17 from 17, the open side for Ulster. But man, when you got Makwane basically beating 10 tacklers, that's 10 missed tackles just from one guy. So yeah, one losing bonus point, or at least 4-try bonus point for Ulster, but not a lot else to take from that one. The Lions will be home to Edinburgh next, and Ulster away to the Bulls, so not far to travel from Joburg to Pretoria. Speaking of the Bulls, who I won't get confused with the Lions, 22-16 win over Edinburgh, so they get their campaign underway, but no bonus point for the Bulls. They were only able to score 3 tries, one through Jana Kirsten. Kind of finished off a nice Kane and Moody break. Van der Valk got one against his old team. And Kane and Moody got one of his own from a kind of quick lineup move. So 3 tries for the Bulls, 1 through Ashman for the Edinburgh guys. I think it was during a yellow card as well for the Bulls. I should admit, some of these games I ended up watching just on the highlights. And kudos again to the URC people for actually getting their highlights watchable this season. I will reiterate the point that I made last week. The highlights are so much better. So I was actually able to get a decent feeling for this game, which I didn't watch in full. But yeah, the Bulls, in what's a relatively low-scoring game in the scheme of things this week, seem to be pretty comfortable winners. Like clean breaks 9-3 is usually a pretty indicative one of which side is going to win the game. And then like the line out is maybe one area that they won't be too happy with. Those 7 from 13 for the Bulls, whereas like Edinburgh's at 14 from 17. So ideally you want to win more of your own line out ball to set up more tries. Like the Moody try, like I mentioned from a quick line out, shows what you can do if you win your lineouts. Mornay Smith put in a huge tackle on Darcy Graham in this one. Very rarely do highlights packages stop to highlight a single tackle, but that was such a hit. Hit him into next week. Unbelievable stuff. But Darcy Graham, to his credit, got up pretty quickly, relatively, in the scheme of things, and dusted himself off. So good effort from that wee man. Moody finished with 115 run meters. Not bad. Honeycomb had 16 tackles and a bunch of carries of his own. Dylan van der Merwe had 78 meters and 3 defenders beaten. Couldn't get over the try line though. But yeah, losing bonus point for Edinburgh is at least something to take from their first game down in South Africa. They're away to the Lions next, so they kind of swap spots with the Ulster guys in terms of not having to travel too far in South Africa. The Bulls will host Ulster. So like I mentioned, kind of swapping teams. Zebre and Munster has to be the upset of the round. I have yet to update the Zebre logo, but I am wearing Zebre gear because they don't get a win that often. And especially over Munster. But 42-33. And Munster were leading like 28-15 at half-time. Unbelievable. I didn't see that coming. Trua, who they were kept calling Trula. I'm pretty sure it's just Trua. 2 tries. One on the right wing and one an intercept. Alessandro Fusco, he ended up getting a couple of snipe tries. Showed a real nice dummy. So 4 tries between those 2 guys. Licata got one and Priscantelli got one. So a bonus point win for Zebre over Munster. Didn't think I would be saying that line, especially when you get Gavin Coombs with a couple of close range tries. Haley getting one. Fitzgerald getting one. I mean, the late one to McCarthy with the Munster hands was pretty nice, but that was all a bit too little too late. So yeah, from a 28-15 kind of bonus point lead to go on and lose the game will be very disappointing for Munster. But man, Zebre were even able to kick a penalty to death to deny Munster a losing bonus point. So what a effort. I mean, the possession stats are pretty damning, I guess, or shows the way the game kind of turned at halftime. Like, possession goes 62-38 to Munster in the first half, but 57-43 to Zebre in the second. So the territory stats were kind of similar as well. So yeah, pretty lopsided, or one of those just kind of Gamatsu halves cliche stories. Turnovers one is maybe one of the key ones, 6-2 in favour of Zebre, and missed tackles 25 by Munster, 15 by Zebre. So one of those ones where defense helps sides win matches. Zebre will host the Stormers next, and the Munster guys are also back home. They will face the Ospreys. Scarlets and Cardiff, all Welsh affair. Talking about sides which couldn't hang on to an early lead. Scarlets literally scored after 14 seconds through Page, and Plumtree got one on 10 minutes. Combine that with a penalty, and it is a 15-0 lead after 10 minutes for the Scarlets. But that's the final scoring of the game. The remaining 4 tries go Cardiff's way, so they walk away from this one with a bonus point win. Belcher, Grady, Millard, and Thomas with the tries. At least one of those tries was 15v13. When the Scarlets guys had some cards, which is obviously going to be pretty costly. But yeah, what a turnaround of this game. And another one, when you look at the stats and look at the tackle numbers, like 84% from Cardiff is all right. Anything above 85 is nice, so they're just kind of below that. But 76% from the Scarlets, you're not going to win that many games if you tackle with that. Generally, Super Rugby sides have a much higher tackling percentage than 76% for context. Run meters finishes 415 to 325, but as I said, for mine it's the tackle stats which are pretty damning. I mean, and also one of those tries that the Scarlets guys conceded was just like Johan Lloyd. I think he mishandled a kick through. And the Cardiff guys were just able to pounce. So, like, even though, like, I look at Lloyd's numbers, 8 defenders beaten 92 metres is pretty nice, but sometimes it's just that one key moment that will kind of haunt you after the end of that game. Dan Thomas made 19 tackles for Cardiff on the open side, which is a pretty good effort. So, Scarlets still winless, a draw, and a loss for them thus far. Whereas Cardiff, who saw them topping the table with Leinster after 2 rounds with maximum points, 2 bonus point wins to start their campaign. That is genuinely quite incredible. They will see if they can keep that up against reigning champions Glasgow next at home. And the Scarlets are also at home to Irish side Connacht. Speaking of Connacht, this is one of the games that I did get to see in its entirety. Their win over the Sharks. I was curious to see how this one would go because the Sharks have got some kind of key recruits. Andre Esterhuizen being one of them, and he bagged 2 tries with some serious power. And this is another team which had a pretty decent lead, which ends up unable to kind of follow up. I think it was 27-7 at one point during this game, and yet Connacht still managed to walk away with a pretty decent win. Like, I mean, the Sharks boys were only able to slot a penalty at the end to get back within losing bonus point range. I mean, Heffernan got one from the maul. Then it was all the Sharks. I mean, the Connacht kicking game had been pretty nice to pin the Sharks guys back for like the first 20 minutes. And it's a pity that it's kind of a reduced capacity at the moment with the stadium works going on, which I had forgotten about. But the crowd's still making themselves pretty vocal. But yeah, the kicking game for the Connacht boys keeping things under control. But then when the Sharks guys got going, their big physical pack, and then Esterhuizen, maybe from their first 22-metre entry on 21 minutes, and then on 28 minutes, not too long later, goes over. Then Krobola with one just before halftime. So absolute power from the Sharks. So 3 tries from them, 27-7. But then the Connacht boys keep the maul stuff going in the second half. They get one through Ford with a combo from Hansen. That one's obviously not a maul try, but they won through Jennings from an intercept. And then Heffernan got one from a second one from a maul as well. So 70th minute Connacht try from a tap and go, which did come not long after that had a chalked off try. You know, kind of TMO'd was a pretty emphatic way to take the lead with 10 minutes to go, and then Ford with a 79th minute penalty to secure the game. Although, as I said, Masuku did get one right at the death to at least get the Sharks boys something out of the game, because they couldn't get a 4th try, but they do at least get a losing bonus point from the start of their URC campaign. Esterhuizen beat 5 defenders, which is kind of not surprising because he was running some direct lines. Niall Murray made 16 tackles for Connacht. But I mean, the overall stats are pretty even. Like, clean breaks is 4 apiece, which is pretty low. Defenders beaten is 21-17 to the Sharks, which shows a bit of their power game. But turnovers 1-5-2 to the Connacht guys. So yeah, kind of a game that could have gone either way, I suppose. But yeah, well done for Connacht at home to get the comeback. And then Ospreys against the Stormers, 37 points to 24. And at this field called Brewery Field. I don't know if I've seen the Ospreys play there before, but it looked a heck of a lot better. I believe it's a bit more established in Welsh rugby folklore than where they were playing at the other, what was the other one called? The football stadium? This one looks much better. I'm assuming it's a hell of a lot lower capacity, but boy, were there a lot of bums on the seats that are available. And that's just a way better vibe than even if it was the same crowd at a triple the size stadium. It just looked and felt a lot better. Didn't seem half attended. It seemed really well attended. Those 37-24. And yeah, the people got entertained. It's another kind of comeback win. Halftime was 16-13, so by no means a done deal like some of the other games seemed to be. But the Ospreys did well. Both sides kicked drop goals. Dan Edwards and Damien WILLEMSA both hit pretty sweet ones with a droppy. Morgan got one. Jack Morgan for the Ospreys. Good to see him back in try scoring form. Morgan Williams, the halfback, had a pretty good game for the Ospreys as well. Scored one, set up one with like a kind of chip gather and offload from the deck for Edwards, and then a penalty try on 80 minutes means it's a bonus point win for the Ospreys, guys. For the Stormers, they got one through Zas on 5 minutes and one through Schickerling kind of towards the end of the game. But yeah, I feel like the Stormers guys will be disappointed not to have made more of the lead that they had. But in terms of a start to the campaign, could be worse. But yeah, they'll certainly be ruining this one if they miss out on a playoff spot or a home quarterfinal or something like that based on a few kind of points missed very early on in the season. So we'll have to wait and see. Offloads was all the Stormers, 13-3. Shows you they were chucking the ball around. But likewise, with some of the other losses, the tackling percentage, 73. I mean, apart from the Ulster guys, that's basically the lowest one this week. And again, you're not going to win that many games if you can't make your tackles. Only 60 made out of 82. Whereas the Ospreys guys, defensive shift made 120 tackles at 86%. So only 3 offloads, but you make your tackles is more important than making your offloads. The Ospreys guys are away to Munster next, and the Stormers guys away to Zebre, which will apparently be no cakewalk. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts on URC round number 2. What did you think of the South African sides? Couple of losses with the Stormers and the Sharks, but the home sides got good wins. That's very stereotypical of the South African sides to pick up the home wins. But first round back in action week behind everybody else, although being with Currie Cup form behind them, it's kind of hard to say whether they're playing catch up or whether they're ahead or whether they're tired or whether they're fresh. It's a bit of a weird one. The scheduling is obviously not ideal with the Springboks playing the same week, same day. Certainly will have affected some of the attendances, but the Springboks are now, with that Rugby Championship trophy secured, not playing until November. So fans who aren't heading to the beaches with the onset of summer might be making their way to some rugby grounds over the URC season. And yeah, some surprise packages, man. Cardiff, 2 from 2, top of the log. Zebre, big win over Munster. And like even Glasgow with that massive win over Benetton, ill-disciplined. Didn't see that kind of scoreline coming. You guys let us know your thoughts. If you wouldn't mind, subscribe to the channel. It'll do me a massive favour if you haven't done so already. And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See ya.